So am I audible to all of you?
Yes.
So congratulations on having qualified for the interview, and my best wishes for your final success in this examination. I am very happy to share my 44 years of experience in guiding the students preparing for the interview purpose and help you in filling up your DAP 2 application form. First and foremost, that the minimum that you have to do is that you are not seen as lying on any of the columns that you are going to fill up. You have already filled up DAF 1. You are going to fill up DAF 2 and the socio-economic questionnaire. And there is one column which is common between the DAF 1 and DAF 2, that is relating to your educational background. And there are also one or two hidden columns from where that the truthfulness of the candidate can be guessed. For example, there is a column in your socio-economic questionnaire form, that is whether you have taken coaching anywhere. It so happened there was a candidate from Maharashtra who was asked by one of the members of the interview board whether he had attended coaching anywhere. And he mentioned yes, he had taken coaching at the Backward Classes Coaching Institute conducted by the Maharashtra government. In the meanwhile, the chairman was digging into the file kept in front of him, and he said yes, he has mentioned it. So this column is found only in your socio-economic questionnaire, not in the DAF 1 and not in DAF 2. Suppose if the candidate had answered that he did not attend any coaching orally, and whereas the chairman found in his file that the candidate had mentioned he had appeared in the coaching. So because of this, that the minimum that you have to do is to ensure that you possess integrity, you are honest in your dealings, and however good the performance may be, if the candidate is caught on the wrong foot, that's all, that year's interview is gone. So because of this, be careful, and from this only I have guessed that whereas the other members of the board, they are given the DAF 2, copy of the DAF 2, whereas the chairman is given the entire file of the candidate, which includes your socio-economic questionnaire as well. Because otherwise it is an internal information which others may not know. This is one opportunity I felt that I should share it with you, so be careful about this. Then second is now in the market that these blank DAP 2 forms are available. You please get hold of one copy, first fill up this column. And be careful in filling up this column, and once you are satisfied with the correctness of the kind of content that you wanted to write, and also spelling and grammatical mistake, and thereafter that you fill it up on the digital format in the UPSC website. After having filled up the digital form DAF 2, that you please allow elders to check your form, and once you are satisfied with the correctness, then alone you upload it. Because the spell check, that you want to write something and it corrects on its own something else. For example, collage making can be corrected by the computer as college making. Principal, your father had been a principal of a college and it will type it as principal. So this kind of mistakes can be committed inadvertently, and because of this, let at least two more persons check your final form before you upload it to the UPSC. Because if you find yourself with such kind of spelling mistakes sitting in front of the interview board, you will feel embarrassed. So because of this, that ensure that there are no mistakes, spelling mistake, grammatical mistakes committed by you or by your computer, and ensure that the right kind of content is written there. There are not many columns in your DAF to be filled up. Most of the information that you had already provided under DAF 1, So let us go through these columns one by one and see that how best you can fill up these columns. So the first is about the column number 1. There are no difficulties in filling up column number 1, 2, 3. And in column number 3, item number I, annual income of your father, annual income of your mother. Do you have the forms with you in front of you? No. So that the first column is mother tongue, that you can write it on your own. Second, place of birth, so that also you can write out. There is and the details of the district and the state from where you come, those details. And column number 3, these are the details relating to your parents, father and mother's names and annual income, the places of their birth, etc. So here EWS candidates and the OBC candidates are to be quite careful about writing the annual income of your father, annual income of your mother. So it should not vary from what you had already provided in the DAF 1. And it should not also exceed what had been prescribed under the rules and regulations. So these are the only 2 columns you will have to be careful about on page number 1. So the rest of the columns that they get filled up on their own. You don't have to struggle much. You have to state the truth. Similarly, in column number Q, and item number 3, main item 3, column number Q, whether your family owns or possesses any of the following assets, 5 acres of land, etc. This again is relevant to the EWS and the OBC candidates. They alone have to be careful about while filling up this column. Now the fourth item is educational qualifications commencing with matriculation or equivalent examination till graduation. This column you have already filled up in your DAF 1. Quite likely that it gets repeated in your DAF 2. You need not have to fill it up again. Maybe that it is the pre-filled when you open your DAF 2. So the same thing that you will be maintaining. You have to mention either the percentage of marks or the CGPA. Either of these 2 will do. You don't have to convert one to the other. Whatever the format in which your marks are indicated by the institution that gave you the certificate, you can fill it up, that will do. And the column number 5, higher educational qualifications. So there, if you have to fill up too many subjects against the subjects of study, that you be selective. There may not be sufficient space available to fill up all the subjects that you studied. For example, if you had been a medical graduate or a postgraduate, then there may be a long list of subjects that you studied during your the undergraduation and post-graduation courses. You be selective. You mention the most important subjects, and that will do. You need not have to exhaust all the subjects that you studied during your graduation or post-graduation. So the 6th one, having regard to answers given against columns 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, which is the state or union territory that you would claim as your home state. For example, one student came this morning and he told me he was born in Bihar, spent his early childhood and school education he had in UP, and thereafter the family moved to Delhi, and now the family is settled down in Delhi. Sir, which of these should I mention as your home state? So the choice is yours. The UPSC does not require any documentary evidence to prove the state that you select as your home state. It is accepted whatever you write here. You will be tested on this count only by way of questioning by the board. If you are giving convincing answer, if you are able to answer the basic questions relating to your state, political, social, economic, special problems of your home state, fine. Any state is accepted as your home state. You may be born in Kerala, but you may indicate Arunachal Pradesh as your home state if there is any link relating to columns 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So it is your choice, you write it. Some of the candidates, they take this opportunity to enhance their allocation to their home cadre. For example, from this particular candidate, I asked him this morning to which state he would like to be allotted to as his home cadre. He said, "Sir, I would like to go back to Bihar." Then I said that write UP or Delhi as your home state here and indicate Bihar as the first preference of service for cadre preference for IAS and IPS. So it's your choice, and but whatever state you write here against column number 6, you must be very thorough in knowing all the details relating to that state. And you must also be a bit prepared on the other states where you had lived for some time, studied for some time. Then the 7th column, particulars at the university, state, national level in respect of 4 sub-columns: prizes, medals, scholarship won, games, NCC, etc. Then the 3rd is positions of distinction or leadership held in school and college. 4th is hobbies, extracurricular activities. These are the 4 sub-columns that you have to fill up under the column number 7. In fact, I would say in the entire DAF 2, this is the most important column. You are all going to appear for the personality test. And your personality is going to be judged primarily on the basis of the details that you are going to write against these 4 sub-columns under column number 7. So your personality is reflected here. The kind of intellectual life that you have led so far, the kind of variety that you had in your living. So all these things are indicated in this column. So this is a column which exhibits multiple levels of your personality. For example, the achievements that you have done so far. Second, it is a kind of invitation to the board members to engage you on certain items that you have indicated there. It's also a kind of invitation to the board members. It also tells the board members what kind of personality are you, the kind of interest you had outside your curriculum. And it very well reflects your suitability for the civil services. So therefore, this is the most important column. In addition to this, generally speaking, in most of the candidates, this is the column from where the interview begins. The chairman is sitting there for 1, 2, 3 or even more years. Whereas the other 4 board members, they are invited for a short period of not more than 2 weeks of stay there. So because of this, that the interview is more new to them. Whereas for the chairperson, it is more a common exercise, a routine exercise which he has to go through. Generally, he opens the DAF 2 to column number 7 and starts the formal interview by asking few questions here. Generally speaking, that the first 5 minutes of the interview sets the tone for the next 25 minutes to follow. The way you answer the questions, the familiarity with which that you are able to answer these questions, they set the tone, and subconsciously it affects the other members of the interview board in setting the questions for the next 25 minutes. So because of this, pay a lot of attention to this column, prepare thoroughly. If you have to refer to so many source materials, do so and do it. For example, somebody mentioned this morning, said that I have the hobby of cultivating bamboo. And I felt it is a very interesting hobby. And I have not come across in all these years that anybody writing bamboo cultivation as a hobby. It will definitely attract the attention of the members. It is likely to attract the attention of not just one member, more than one member are likely to ask questions on the same topic. But the candidate must be very thorough with this preparation, how he picked up this hobby, etc. They may even go to asking questions on what is bamboo curtain, like the Iron Curtain, which fell across between the Eastern Europe and Western Europe after the Second World War. What is this bamboo curtain? So likewise, that you must think from a different angle. So this is a very interesting hobby, and sure to attract 5 minutes of the interview board's time with the candidate. But if the candidate is thoroughly prepared on this, he can definitely enhance his score well. So likewise, be very thorough in filling up these columns and be prepared on these columns well. Further, there is a tendency among the candidates to write what all they had done in the past against these 4 subcolumns and make it too crowded. And in this way, that the candidate makes it difficult for a board member to choose the items from where that he can ask questions. So because of this, you should also filter the items that you are going to write here. Don't write what all you have done. There is no point, for example, against the column of positions of leadership held. If you write school people's leader, fine, it is good. Head boy at school, it's good. But if somebody writes that gold medal in first standard, so that is of no use. So therefore you have to filter and write only the most important items against these columns. My suggestion is that you write minimum 2 columns against each of these, minimum 2 items against each of these columns. Hobbies, extracurricular activities, etc., minimum 2. Maximum 3 or 4. Don't crowd it with too many hobbies. You will be confusing the board members. Write 2, 3, ideally 3 and not more than 4. And number them 1, 2, 3, 4. Because sometimes if you write one item after the other with a colon, it gets mingled with each other and the board members may be confused. So you put that this prizes, medal, scholarship 1, number 1, you mention governor's gold medal in class 2, 12. Then second, president's gold medal. So whatever that you have to write, you please number them 1, 2, 3 and write it so that it becomes very clear for them from separating each other. So this column especially has to be checked by 2-3 people, and the wording is also very important. You should choose the right kind of words and write as minimum as possible. And while writing this, for example, reading as your hobby, instead of stating just reading, be more particular about what kind of reading interests you. So whether it is non-fiction or fiction, or more importantly, reading techno-thrillers. So if you write reading, that they may just overlook it because they had seen many candidates writing reading as the hobby. Whereas if you write reading Agatha Christie's fiction or techno-thrillers, so the word techno-thriller itself attracts the attention of the board member. So he wants to know out of his own curiosity, what is this techno-thriller? Because I heard about this for the first time when somebody had written it as a hobby. So I was interested. So therefore that think over and choose the right kind of words and write it as short as possible. So one medical graduate had written herpetology, the study of snakes. So these are the things that instead of writing study of snakes, if somebody writes as herpetology, the word itself makes it more interesting for the board members to ask questions. So it shows your application of mind, and the choice of words are very important. And don't use the words like teaching street children. Instead, you write teaching underprivileged children. So you must also be refined in the use of the language while filling up these columns. Probably this column will take more time in getting filled up than any other column in your DAF 2. And get all the forms ready before the final date. Maybe 1 or 2 days earlier you can fill up and upload them. But once you have filled it up in the next couple of days, that don't rush through, immediately submit it, that think it over. For example, if you go through the items that you have filled up immediately after having filled up, you are unlikely to notice certain mistakes because you have filled up the columns with a kind of mindset. And with the same mindset, if you start checking up, you are unlikely to notice the mistakes that you had made. Keep it aside, take it up after 12 hours, 24 hours, and go through it. Now, from a different mindset, you will be able to identify the mistakes, and you will be able to even introduce changes in the way you have used the language. And give it to your senior friends, teachers, parents, or some senior civil servant whom you know, and let them check up, and thereafter you can write it. Then the next is about this the cadre allocation, the cadre choices that you are going to indicate. First and foremost, as a general instruction, I would suggest don't be too conservative in the choice of your cadre. You have all decided to become the All India Service officers, IAS or IPS. If you are allotted, you will be happy joining that. Having decided to become an All India Service officer, you should not be too conservative in the choice of the cadre, and you should be mentally accept if any other cadre is allotted other than your home cadre. Moreover, I have found from my experience, those who get the home cadre, in a way, they settle down very comfortably in their home cadre. They marry a local girl, and their children study, they build their homes there, and they hardly ever aspire to go on deputation to the central agencies. They spend the entire career in the state and retire there as maximum secretary or DGP, home guard. So, because of this, whereas on the other hand, candidates who do not get their home cadre, they look forward for the earliest opportunity to go on an deputation to the central government. So there are so many central government departments to which that an IAS officer can become a secretary as compared to his own home state, where there are less number of departments to which one can become the secretary. There is only one chief secretary post at the state level, whereas there are at least 24 secretary level postings equivalent to chief secretary at the state level available at the central government level. So because of this, do not curtail your career growth and development by strongly looking for an allotment to your home cadre. So therefore, that be open, and you make the balance between two things while choosing your cadre. The first is your own choice. After all that, if you can go to the home cadre, still you can seek a deputation to the central government. Getting allotted to the home cadre does not limit your opportunities to get deputation to the central government. It's your mindset. So your own choice, that is the most important one. Second is balance it with career growth and development. For example, students from the deep south who had been allocated to Chhattisgarh cadre, they were a little unhappy in the beginning. But later I found that they were happy. In the sense they said, sir, that we got opportunity to be appointed as district collector within 3 years of service. And they got opportunity to serve as district collector for 2 terms, 6 years or more. And they also felt happy that they could do a lot of developmental activities there. Probably at the time when they got allocated, the local politicians were not too smart like the politicians coming from Maharashtra, Gujarat, etc. So they gave a lot of freedom for them to work and do developmental works. So after all, home cadre has its own advantages and disadvantages, and similarly that the outside cadre also has its own advantages and disadvantages. I know one candidate who got allocated to Tripura cadre. He was very unhappy, but now he is working in the PMO's office, and he says that he is sought after whenever it comes to any decisions to be taken relating to the northeastern states. And he said that after 5 years of initial posting, he came to Delhi. He was allotted a house here, and when the 3-year deputation term was over, he went back, but he was allowed to retain the house in Delhi. So the family could stay here and the children could study here in Delhi schools. And of course, that your job brings you quite often to the center for consultation and other things. So you are not going to be too far separated from your family. Your family can either join you at Tripura or you can join the family in Delhi. So it all depends upon your mindset. Have a all India outlook while choosing your cadre, and don't be too conservative. Right. Well, ultimately, cadre choice is your personal choice. My advice is generally prefer larger states. So don't go to smaller states. Your activities will be limited to smaller areas. The size of the district will also be smaller in smaller states, whereas the size of the districts are generally larger in larger states. So prefer a larger state. And prefer the developing states where you can do a lot of the basic work, developmental works, instead of choosing more developed states. And in zone 1, for example, I would prefer Rajasthan to be the topmost state, whether you come from Rajasthan or from any other state, that it gives you a lot of opportunities. And thereafter, it is your personal choice to make the other choices. And in zone 2, that yes, that the Jharkhand, Orissa, Bihar, they may not be bad choices. All four are equally developing states that you can indicate your choice according to your own preference. So it can be either Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Bihar and Orissa, or in whatever format that you want to indicate it. So then in zone 3, that don't push Chhattisgarh to the bottom. You can give relatively a better preference for Chhattisgarh. You can do a lot of work there. And Chhattisgarh posting can be as worst or as good as Maharashtra, because you can also be posted in Maharashtra to the Naxal affected areas. It's not only in Chhattisgarh you get that opportunity. So people who had gone to Chhattisgarh have started writing their experience in the form of a book, that how they handle the Naxal movement there and their special experience in this regard. So any opportunity that you get can be converted to your own career growth and development. So zone 4, so I would say that among all these states, Assam, Meghalaya offer you better opportunities. Sikkim is too small a state for you to work, and the rest of the things are fine. And generally students don't prefer West Bengal. They don't give you a top the position to this state. Again, I leave it to you to decide. So such choice may not be out of place. It's up to you to choose West Bengal. And zone 5, normally Kerala gets pushed to the bottom, and whereas the IPS officers are very happy in Kerala, the IAS officers may not be very happy in Kerala. So you may give you a different cadre preference for IAS and IPS depending upon the service conditions that are prevalent there. So in zone 5, generally Karnataka tops, followed by Telangana, then Andhra Pradesh, fourth one is Tamil Nadu, and finally Kerala. These are the 5 states in that order. So I would say that apart from the general instructions I have given you, that you should choose according to your own personal taste. In fact, that nowadays that the Agmut cadre is becoming less popular for the simple reason 2 more union territories have been added. And one of the Agmut cadres too, who is from Delhi, that he regretted for having opted for Agmut. His first posting during the probation period was in Andamans. Then he was shifted to Lakshadweep, and from there he was shifted to Ladakh. And he was fearing that he may be shifted next to Northeast. And because of this, he said, sir, even my marriage has been delayed. So the no longer Agmut is as attractive as it used to be once. And moreover, in Agmod, that you tend to work in smaller districts. The size of the district is not even the size of a taluk in a regular state, in a union territory. So that also that it limits your opportunities to work and provide for some development. So because of this, you be careful about the new development that has taken place relating to the Agmut cadre. Then the last part of this is the service preference. In fact, I had spoken to 4 or 5 officers from different Group A services. I did not talk to any of the IAS or IPS or IFS officers because these services they get selected all on their own. But it is only in the choice of Group A services that there are different viewpoints that are expressed by the service officers. Now, what are the rankings that I have provided? It is only as a given as a general idea about how to make your preference of services, but you apply your own mind and make small changes here and there in choosing your service preference. All said and done, there is no service better than IAS. In terms of career growth and development, in terms of job profile, and in terms of opportunities available both within the country and outside the country, and in terms of promotional avenues, there is no service that is equivalent to the IAS. For example, in a state, there is only 3 or 4 DGPs, but there are at least 18 to 20 secretary level postings. So after the Inspector General of Police rank, that the promotional avenues are limited for the IPS officers. Whereas for the IAS officers, that the promotional avenues, they continue to be available for them till they retire. There is only one foreign secretary, but there are at least 24 secretaries to the government of India. So because of this, in terms of career growth and development, in terms of richness of the service and richness of the experience, that there is nothing like IAS. You take it according to your choice, but still there are people who prefer a uniform service. So my first preference is for IAS. The second preference is for either IPS or IFS. The third is IFS or IPS. The fourth one is IRS income tax. Of course, that some may prefer IRS over IPS. The small changes you can make on your own. Then the fifth is IRS customs. Sixth, Indian Audit and Account Service. Well, thereafter the problem arises. The seventh one, Indian Civil Account Service. There are candidates who mentioned the Indian Civil Account Service to the 12th, 13th places also. But in terms of postings, in Civil Account Service, most of the postings will be within Delhi. So because of this, the candidate, he settles down well in Delhi, and that way there is hardly any transfers that affect this service. So if somebody is looking for a kind of settled family life where the children should go to the best of the educational institution, because after all, Delhi is the best place for getting good education in India. So then accordingly that one can choose. Then the next is Indian Defense Estate Service. So this service involves a lot of administrative work. In the cantonment areas, that the Indian Defense Estate Service officers are posted as administrative heads. It is something like the district magistrate or the district collector, but in the cantonment area. Especially in the first 10 to 15 years of service, the people are very happy, and the service officers, the military officers, so they are also to be in the good books of these district administrators in the cantonment area. Lot of importance that one gets. It's a good service, better than the defense account and other account related services. Then the next is Indian Defense Account Service. Then Indian Postal Service. In spite of the fact that the post offices are losing the importance, but still that there is a variety, a lot of other varieties of job that can be done. So people believe in terms of promotional avenues available, because there are so many post offices and the organization is very strongly present all throughout the country, and because of this the promotional avenues are good. Then 11th, Indian Corporate Law Service. Indian Trade Service. So these two are yet to get organized in terms of structure. So the job profile is good according to those who are serving in this Indian Company Law Service. Job profile is nice. But the thing is that the organization has not been well set up. And because of this, there are delays in promotions, but otherwise that the job profile is good and not many transfers. So Indian Information Service. Then the Indian Railway Protection Force. Thereafter, depending upon one's background, Danics would be a better service. Danics and Danips may be given a service, even a higher preference, provided that somebody comes from Delhi or Haryana or the nearby states of the Delhi. So this can be. The only problem is that these two services, they are Group B services. It takes about 15 years before a Danics officer gets his confirmation as an IAS officer, or Danips officer getting confirmation as an IPS officer. So except that, the other benefits may attract somebody, nearness to home, stay mostly in Delhi. So depending upon your preference, you can give a higher preference to these two. So the 17th, Indian P&T Account Service. Indian Ordnance Factory Service. Pondicherry Civil Service. Pondicherry Police Service. And the Armed Forces Headquarters Service. Whereas in Defense Estate Service, the civil servants dominate the military officers. But in the Armed Forces Headquarters Service, the civil servants are dominated by the service officers. So because of this, people do not generally prefer the Armed Forces Headquarters Service. So these are my choices, and make your own preferences according to your background. Depending upon from where you come, etc., you can decide. For those who come from the south, especially from Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, that a higher preference can be given to the Pondicherry Civil Service and Pondicherry Police Services, not necessarily 19th or 20th. So these are the columns that you have to fill up. And this socio-economic questionnaire, that don't be too open. For example, that there are columns. Give 2 reasons in order of priority for preferring civil services. Whatever be your things, I would say that be moderate in indicating your choices, because even though the UPSC claims that these details are going to be used only for research purpose, and in no way the details you disclose in the questionnaire that is going to be used for the selection process. But I have my doubt, as I narrated earlier, that this questionnaire may also be with the chairperson. So if he just goes through and finds that you have given power, authority, leadership opportunities as your first priority for joining civil services, or prestige, social status, then it means that there is hardly any element of public service that is indicated there. So because of this, that be careful in choosing this. Diversity and challenge can be first priority. Public service and utility to society can be the second priority. 2 priorities you have to give. So these are the things. Now it is for you to raise your doubts, get them clarified. And at the end of the session, if you have to discuss something little personal, you can meet me in my cabin. I will be available there till 8:39. So yes, what are your basic doubts? Generally, we will keep it to doubts relating to the common interest of all of you. We will discuss personal issues. We can discuss in my cabin. Yes. Which one? The thing is, why do you exclude yourself? Include IPS according to your choice. Let the medical board disqualify you. Why you disqualify yourself? If there is a difference of just 1 centimeter, that the board may be as good as I am, medical board, and it may qualify you.
But if someone says it's about the integrity of the person.
You are not telling a lie. You are indicating your choice. It is not your duty to select you into IPS or reject you. Let the board decide. The medical board, let it decide. You are not lying. You are not stating anywhere you are 165 centimeters in height. Then it is your choice. I appreciate your honesty and integrity, and I hope you continue to remain there like that. No, everybody joins the civil services with a lot of idealism, but how long it lasts is something which is to be tested at the job level. But fine, it's your choice. Then why did you ask this question in the first place?
I don't want to hide in the foreign service.
Foreign service. Yes.
But if I decided the Indian foreign service, if I am selected, then what?
Join. No, look, another advice I would like to give you, if you do not like IFS, like he says, don't push it to the bottom. The IFS officer, if he is sitting there as a member, he will feel offended. For example, if you do not want IFS, you can indicate IFS as the third preference. Because after IPS, IAS, IPS and IFS, because for a given rank that you get in the exam, if you are not allotted to IPS, the same rank will not fetch you IFS. If you get a rank of 140 And if the rank of 140 cannot get you IPS, the same rank of 140 cannot get you IFS also. So to write IFS below IPS or IRS is meaningless. And at least the IFS officer will not feel offended, he will be happy with you, or at least he won't be unhappy with you. So therefore, that even if you do not like IFS, you give it as the third choice or fourth choice. Better give fourth choice, because if for one reason or the other the medical board rejects you for IPS, then you will get allotted to IFS. So give it as the fourth choice after IAS, IPS, IRS, income tax, and IFS. Yes?
Sir, I need some clarity regarding IFS.
Yes.
So first of all, I have heard that until and unless the parents are dependent on you, you are not allowed to take them with you. Is it true?
No. They can travel and they stay with you. It is your personal family issue. Why should they decide who will stay with you and who will not stay with you? It is your fundamental right. To travel abroad is your parents' fundamental right under Article 21. And to decide on who will live with you is your fundamental right. Don't worry about it. That parents are allowed to stay with you.
Sir,
Yes?
there are visa regulations.
Huh?
There is a problem for visa for the parents.
Ah.
If they want to come, there is a restriction of the time period they can live with you. Is there anything like that?
No, that is if you are working in a private capacity in that state. Myopic eyesight criteria, yes, IPS, that there is the criterion fixed for your eyesight. It should not be -4 for the IPS candidates. Yes, what are the other questions? Let us not ignore the online candidates. They have more questions. They are always more free to ask questions online. IPS cadre allocation commissionerate system, yes, that in some of the states that the commissionerate system is more prevalent, like in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, etc. In Uttar Pradesh, the commissionerate system of policing has been introduced only in the recent times, in the last 2-3 years or so, and there are only 2 commissionerates. Whereas in the other states, southern states, it's more. So yes, that as a commissioner of police, that you get more freedom and you are not under the control of the district magistrate. Do we get extraordinary leave or preparation in all services? No, not all services, some services. Indian Audit and Account Service does not provide you extraordinary leave facility to prepare for the subsequent attempts. Till you complete your probation, the Indian Audit and Account Service rules do not allow you to go on leave. Only on the day of your examination, main examination, the Indian Audit and Account Service gives you leave. As probationer, you are entitled to take leave only on those days you have to write your exam. Whereas in the Indian Revenue Services, you are given this extraordinary leave facility. It depends upon service to service. Considering other things as neutral, which state should be kept at the topmost preference in Zone 3? In Zone 3, I would say that given my choice, I will go to Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Gujarat. Please show the screen for 7 to 13. Seven is Indian Civil Account Service. 8th onwards, this. I have a hobby of learning about body language. Good. The study of body language is called kinesics. So should I mention it? Yes, very much, because it's not one of the routine hobbies. It's something which is going to attract the interest of the members. But the thing is that there can be a lot of sub-questions asked. Is it a pseudoscience, or it is a reliable way of understanding the personality of the other person? Because the body language depends upon the culture in which one is born and brought up. So if you can handle this question, it will be a very interesting area of discussion. You already know one question which is going to be asked from you. So the question paper is out. So mention it. It's a very good hobby. Provided you prepare it better, please mention it. What if I don't have any distinct medal, etc.? Will it affect my marks in the interview? It won't. But if you have, it is going to help you out. And please do not manufacture any medal, prizes, hobbies, etc. Write what is true. As I said, the minimum, if a candidate has an average interview, without affecting his the honesty and integrity part, he is likely to get 65% marks, 65% marks. Whereas even if the performance is outstanding, if a candidate is seen as lying, finish, that's all. That attempt is gone. So because of this, be truthful in filling up your hobbies. Don't write something which you cannot handle there. Yes?
How do we justify weird hobbies?
Justify?
Have this hobby where like making trick shots. Like for example, I used to water bottles as very thin guy. And I tried from a distance, I tried to throw playing cards in between them. So like how do we justify this?
Yeah, it is. You yourself accepted that it is a weird hobby. I agree. That is something which you have to decide, because I am hearing this as a hobby for the very first time. And on the face of it, prima facie, it doesn't look like something which is a constructive hobby. It is something to waste away your time. Instead, you can go for rifle shooting. That is a better way of choosing your target. Unless you have something positive that you have learned. Say, you can talk convincingly about the concentration, improved levels of concentration in you. Fine. Yes, that it all depends upon how convincing are you as a lawyer in a court of law. I have master's degree from UK and got grades as final results. I don't know how to change that to CGPA or percentage. You just mention only the grade, because you do not know, if you do not know the formula for conversion of the grade into marks or CGPA, then you write the grade. Written exam in English but opted Hindi for interview. Is there any issue in mixing up of the language? No problem. You take the interview in Hindi. If a candidate opts for a medium other than English in the vernacular language, and if it is Hindi, the whole interview will be conducted in Hindi, because there are enough number of members with the background of the Hindi language available to conduct the interview. Questions will be asked in Hindi and the candidate can answer in Hindi. However, in a vernacular language other than Hindi, it is likely 99% that the board members, they ask questions only in English. And the candidate is required to answer either in English or in the language of the mother tongue, or whatever language of interview he has chosen. Generally speaking, they have a translator, and the translator eats away half of your answer and gives you only the other half of the answer. And it is not a good idea to opt to speak in the language of the medium that you have chosen if it is a vernacular language other than Hindi. You opt to answer in English there. In fact, the board tells you beforehand that you can prefer to answer in Hindi, in English, though you opt for a medium other than English. So the only advantage is that the English language expression does not count much. Even if you make grammatical mistakes in giving your answer in English, it is well accepted. So please do not opt for English if you are not confident of expressing yourself well in English. You opt for a language of your choice, Tamil, Telugu, Punjabi, whatever it is. But you will be given the opportunity to answer the questions before the interview board in English. Don't opt for the use of the translator. He will kill your chances. Invariably, that this is the experience of the students who opt for vernacular language medium at the interview level.
So,
Yes?
so in the cadre preference, if I give preference to zone, and there is a choice we don't give preference to any of the states. So, how much will it affect?
Then you are giving the choice to the UPSC. Instead of exercising your choice of selecting the states, you are allowing the UPSC to do so.
So if I'm not inclined to any of the state, like I choose my home state as the first preference they are asking, and other like I choose Ekman, and rest of them I just don't give any choice.
Which one do you prefer? Would you like to express your choices, or would you allow others to express your choices? Would you like to marry and select the girl on your own, or would you like somebody else to elect? Exercise your option. Then you will regret if you are shunted to one far off place. Oh, why I left it to the UPSC? You should take up the responsibility and make the choice. Yeah.
Following Indian politics or following Indian political developments can be a hobby.
Yeah, Indian political development can be a hobby provided you remain neutral and you have very well balanced answers for the questions that are asked. Probably sometimes that there may be very difficult questions, embarrassing questions can also be asked.
What do you suggest I should avoid?
You are a international relations student, political science, huh? Sociology. It all depends upon how you handle it. It will be quite interesting for them to engage you. But how far you can maintain your balance is something which is to be. What are your other hobbies? It depends upon not just this hobby alone. Debating and traveling. Debating can be very interesting. There also they can corner you. For example, that ragging should be allowed in schools and colleges so that the boys and girls, they shed their shyness and they move freely, argue. So you may be asked to argue in favor of ragging. But that is a good hobby. You think it over and you have still 3-4 days more. So relatively, whether you have better hobbies, you write them. Do upload the sessions, please, as I missed it. We are uploading it? Yeah, okay, it will be uploaded. I am from West Bengal, but do not want to put it as first preference. Haryana is my first preference. Is this a problem? Yes, no problem at all. You have the right to make your choice of cadre. Then in that case, you will not be considered for West Bengal. You will be considered for the states you are preferring. Yes?
I have my hobbies more with respect to the music part. I mean, I compose my own songs, I'm a guitarist as well. But I was thinking to add something like traveling too, which I often do, to diversify my hobbies. So, should I add that or should I avoid it?
Yes. Will you be able to handle questions on traveling? Have you traveled widely?
Yes, sir.
You can share your experience well with them. And you have to also prepare something about, say, even questions like the pandemic and its impact on hospitality sector. Such kind of questions can also be asked. So yes, that there is variety in what you say, you can write.
Because the two hobbies which I was going to mention, I thought that keeping it to the two would be better than making an addition with respect to the travel.
Yes, that there is variety, you can write it. The only thing is you have to be well prepared on all aspects relating to traveling industry.
Writing, programming, or coding as a hobby, will it be fine? Or
Writing?
programming or coding as a hobby, will it be fine or it will appear for the academic thing and this thing?
Yes, that's a good hobby, you can write it.
Could you elaborate more on the Indian trade service?
Yeah, Indian trade service is a good service. People are by and large happy and postings are generally in big cities. So that way it's a good service. And promotions are delayed. But they expect that once the it is organized, the promotions will be faster later. But as far as job profile is concerned, they are happy.
Sir, with respect to the socioeconomic questionnaire, should we mention that we have taken the coaching or should we avoid that?
It's up to you. If you have taken it, you mention it. These days, most members know that in one way or the other, students are taking coaching. You can limit it to the extent that you want to reveal it to the board members.
Is there any specific reason for placing a corporate law service above trade services?
There is more diversity in corporate law service. Trade service is more limited.
Sir, if someone has hobby just like asana and pranayama, which is the part of the yoga, so then what's the better? It feel like yoga and practice specify asana and pranayama. Is that just like
One thing that most of the board members they practice yoga or meditation in one form or the other. They are well aware of these details, so they are likely to handle you for some time. One. Second, this is one hobby which is most often written by most of the students. It's not a very interesting and new hobby. It is a hobby more students write. So you write one of them, and meditation it becomes an integral part of yoga. You write one of them and try to write some other hobby where you introduce some variety in your hobbies.
I doubt this that if I feel yoga, just yoga, and specify asana and pranayama, this is specified, or I feel just only asana and pranayama.
No, but you specify it more particularly. By the way, if somebody does not have any hobby at all, and he has only interest in certain areas, instead of leaving the column blank, it's better you write nothing in particular. That's a better way of expressing you don't have any special hobby. But you are interested in many other activities. And they say if it is nothing in particular, then what do you do? Then you can mention that the areas of your interest. So don't leave this column blank. Instead, write nothing in particular.
Sir, what is the difference between hobby and interest?
Hobby is something which you do it on a consistent basis and you derive pleasure out of that. Whereas interest means it may be less consistent and you are not quite well involved with that hobby, with that interest. You may shift from one interest to another interest.
Sir, please tell us more about
Hobby is more formal. Interest is less formal. Yes? Indian Information Service, yes, that it is confined to one area. Then these days that hardly anybody listens to the Doordarshan news. So their role has come down considerably with the expanding nature of the communication sector. It was a popular service about 10-15 years ago. I spoke to few there, no longer that it is not such a popular service. That's why I have given a lower preference to that. Huh?
in Indian audit and account service, we don't get leave for fitness. So we are determined to prepare again for
You are allowed to take the exam. You cannot be prevented. But the thing is, they won't give you any leave to prepare. Only on the day of your exams, they will give you the leave.
So, sir, should we give it what preference so that we don't get
It is a personal choice that you have to make. Then in that case, you give a lower preference.
Is there any strict adherence to DMI or
Strict,
adherence to DMI?
no, they are not very strict. Even obese people get selected.
Sir, with respect to the section of badges and medals, can we mention our achievement that we have achieved a rank in the All India PMT and the state PMT level?
Yeah. Again, do you have better things to write than this?
Yes, sir.
Then you remember, as I said, that write 3 or maximum 4 items under that. So if you have 3 better hobby, the medals, prizes, scholarships to be mentioned, better prefer that. I have declared a higher income for my parents' income in DAF 1 than the one declared in income tax returns. I am an OBC candidate. Will this become a problem in my interview? So you can mention that the income levels that you have mentioned in the DAF 1 was according to the earlier levels of income. You can provide the current income tax returns that your parents have filed. That will be accepted. Whatever the latest will be accepted. So recordings, yes, it will be uploaded. Please wait. Can working out reading IR articles be relevant as hobbies and interests? As you can write reading newspaper as hobby, many have written it. But the thing is, you must even know who is the editor of the newspaper. You can write it. And why do you call reading as newspaper a hobby? That everybody reads newspaper. Why do you want to call it as a hobby? You must be able to explain why it is special to you reading the newspaper. I want to ask that I was working as a freelancer for last 3 years. Can I write that in the DAF? There is no column in DAF 2 for you to write this. It is something which you must have written in your DAF 1, not in DAF 2. No column for that. There is no column for your employment. Should we leave blank the column of sports if not played as a state or university level? Well, it mentions school and university, college level, not school level, college level. If there is nothing else for you to write, you just write the sports that you played at the school level also. There is no harm in it. Because no documentary evidence is asked. If you can talk about sports that you want to mention against that column, and if you are confident about it, you can mention it instead of leaving it blank. Should I write my home cadre as UP or Agmut to get better chances of posting in UP? That you can, insider vacancies is 1, outsider vacancy is 2, it is 1:2. That way the chances of getting your UP cadre are higher if you appear as an outsider candidate for UP. But in that case, what would you do if you are allotted to Agmut? That is a chance which you have to take. Sir, I have my hobbies as listening to stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata. Should I indicate them? Yes, that the discussion will be very vast and wide. You do not know from where they will pick up questions based on Mahabharata and Ramayana and ask you questions. So yes, that it can raise a lot of unexpected questions. Be careful about it. I had written the main exam in English medium but optional Hindi for interview. Is there any issue in mixing language? No at all. There are specifically given in the DAP 1. You can indicate any of them. You can take the interview also in Hindi. Could you explain CFL system for IFS? What is CFL?
Compulsory language.
Compulsory foreign language. Yes, that based upon your ranking in the civil services exam and based upon your allocation to a region of the world, you will be taught a language. It can be either Spanish or it can be even Mandarin. That is all decided after the selection, depending upon primarily on your ranking in the civil services exam. Can we mention members of college clubs as leadership positions? Well, if you have nothing else to write, you write it instead of leaving the column blank. Among Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, which one should be the preferred in Zone 5? Because of the capital Hyderabad, most students prefer Telangana over Andhra Pradesh. It is left to your choice now. Can I put my profession of data analysis as my hobby? Yes, you can do so. No harm. As IRS in incorporating faceless assessment, thus becoming more like a desk job, can I choose IE and AS as second preference if I don't want IFS and IPS? Yes, you can do so. For example, in the 70s and 80s, Indian Audit and Account Service was the most preferred service among all the Group A services. after IAS, IPS, IFS, that it was invariably Indian Audit and Account Service that was preferred. Peaceful, quiet service, mostly posted in the big capitals in Delhi. It's a good service.
Sir,
Yes?
if you are not belong for any sports and NCC, then it is good to not fill.
If you cannot talk on any sports NCC, then you better leave it blank. But they may ask you that why you never played any game.
Because I do asana and pranayama.
Now you are playing games with the board by giving this answer. So I am a serving officer in the Indian Railways Personal Service belonging to 2015 batch. Keeping in mind the privatization scenario, till what preference should I fill in services? As indicated by me, written on the blackboard already. So you go according to that. Is watching stand-up comedy can be put as a hobby? Yes, that it can, provided that you tell them few jokes, and through those jokes that you convey some values. So not every joke which you crack with your friends can be shared there. It has to be a very decent, good joke conveying some message to the board. That kind of jokes you can select, be prepared, and it's a good thing. What do you want to convey through this? For example, how do you think that this hobby will make you a better civil servant? So if you can give certain examples to show how you can promote team spirit in your office by this the stand-up comedy, then fine, they will like it. Yes?
Sir, learning a new language or learning French, which one should I write as?
Which language you are learning?
French.
Then write learning French. More specific. Sir, I had joined an NGO for a very short period. Should I mention it? Can you speak about the work that the NGO has been doing? You might have worked there for just about a month. But what is important is, can you talk about the work that is being done by the NGO well? That is important. So if you know about the nature of the job the NGO is performing, write it. Can going for walk in the evening be considered as a hobby? If you have nothing else to write, then fine, it is good enough to write instead of leaving it blank. Do we need to provide proof for every prize medals? No. Nobody wants any documentary proof against column number 7. It will be tested only by way of questions.
There is a column where the other documents should be uploaded as given in the last.
Yes.
That's what we have to upload.
Yeah, but if you do not have documentary evidence to show against column number 7, that doesn't matter. It is only the clerical staff who will ask for it. The board members won't ask for it.
For IPS, if you are LASIK operated, is there any restriction?
No, not now. Earlier it was. Internship. I think in column number, in the DAF 2, there is no specific column for you to write. What kind of internship? Medical internship? Again, what kind of internship? Research, what research?
Sir, it was on a political cross-country analysis that I've done in Germany. So should I mention it?
Yes, that if you have nothing else to write and if you can talk well and it is an interesting reading for the board, write it, then it is welcome. Ultimately, it all boils down to how well you can speak on an issue which you are going to mention in the DAF 2.
If we have our certificate proof with respect to the prizes and medals, should we upload it or should we avoid uploading?
Upload it. If you have the documents with you, upload it, nothing harm. No harm. Can hobby be mentioned like meditation, etc.? Yes. You can mention meditation, self-inquiry, yes. You can also mention that what do you inquire, how it benefits you. You must be prepared to face questions on these kind of unusual hobbies. Can we write housekeeping as a hobby? Very well, many have written it. And how you talk on housekeeping, and can you show some innovation in housekeeping, that will fetch marks for you. There is a small typographical error in my address in ITR of my father. House number is yes, the rest is the same. Will it create an issue? No, if at all. You can reproduce a certificate from the income tax department. It's not an, if it is a typographical error, it should not affect your chances. I worked as some NGO, but only for that I have answered this. Advaitism, Vedanta as hobby, but may not answer all questions related to it. So even Advaitya, proponents, they don't know everything about that. It will be a difficult hobby to handle. You never know that from which angle that questions will be asked about Vedanta. Unless you are confident about answering this, please don't mention it. Can I write a hobby which I am not able to pursue presently, but I did it in the past? The thing is, whether you pursued it earlier or now is not important, but how well you can talk on that, that is important. Nobody is going to ask you that whether you pursued it earlier or now. So can you talk on your hobby? Are you aware of what you have written in your DAF? That is more important. Do we need certificate for everything mentioned in the award section? No. As I said, documentary evidence is not necessary for what you write against column number 7. So zone 4, what is it? Zone 4 is Tamil, the southern states, I think. Yes. Oh no, the northeast. So Assam, Meghalaya is the most preferred one, and thereafter your choice not much to make out. Does not have a very specific, I don't have any specific interest. So can I write watching cricket matches and watching war movies? Yes, watching war movies can be a very interesting hobby. They can link it with the current crisis in Ukraine. Do you think that the 20th century after the world wars was a relative period of peace and stability? How far this Ukrainian crisis has changed that concept? So they can bring it under the current developments. It's a very good hobby. You please mention it if you can talk on it. My eyesight is minus 5.5. I don't think you are eligible for technical services. IPS and DONIPS, you are not eligible. Do we need to provide? But anyway, you write your IPS preference, let the board reject. Do we need to provide proof for every prices I have already mentioned? You don't have to. I have joined Bihar Educational Service after my mains exam, and I am supposed to bring my undertaking, or you better take your certificates with you and don't offer to mention it to the board unless the board asks, what are you doing now? Then you can bring in the current job that you are holding it. So solving Sudoku is also a hobby. Many have written, you can do so. Can I mention art and crafts as hobby? Yes, many people have mentioned. And what kind of craft that you do, there will be further questions. If you can answer that question well, you can write it. I am from Uttar Pradesh, but know various languages like Tamil, Telugu. Is there a way I can subtly highlight that? So you can mention as hobby learning many languages. If you can talk in Tamil and Telugu, though your mother tongue is Hindi, then you can mention that learning Indian languages as a hobby, fine. I did not get your opinion on selection of choice of words. Should I opt for learning about body language or just kinesics? That you mentioned the specific word kinesics, that is better. They will ask you, what is it? Instead of writing body language, you mention the scientific term. Can we mention prices earned at the private sector job in DAF here? Prices, medals? Yes, students do write. And the medals and hobbies received when they were working in a private sector. Could you please explain? Yes, that answer. Yeah. All these questions I have answered. I think that's all. If someone sustains an injury Where is that question? Watching Hindi comedy serial can be a hobby, yes, provided you don't make it a comedy there. So if you can handle the questions, anything can be written there, and it all depends upon how you answer the questions. That is more important. Right, anything else? Any other questions from you?
In interview, questions about home state can be asked.
Yes?
So, for Bihar, is there any reference book?
Well, the best way to prepare on your home state is first go through the website of your state government, especially the website of the social welfare department, agriculture, industry, the various departments. Because, for example, if you go through the social welfare department of your state government, you can gather very well the kind of social problems that are existent in your state, and what are the various social welfare schemes that the government has launched. So that is the best way to prepare on your home state. Then regular reading of the newspaper. There are no specific books to deal with this kind of state related issues.
How in depth do we have to prepare for our graduation?
Subject, it again depends upon your chance. If there is a member who is a specialist in the subjects that you had studied at the graduation level, he is likely to engage you for some time. Otherwise, what you do is basics and fundamentals of the subject that you had studied at the college level plus the current developments. For example, plastics. If you have done chemical engineering or BSc chemistry, they can pick up topics like plastics. The plastic pollution can be an important area of discussion. How can I best justify neutrality if I am asked why I haven't chosen my home state as my first preference? That you can mention that having lived there, worked there, understood your state well, you thought that you will explore and work in a different cultural setting, and that is why I opted for it. Or you can mention the other state I have preferred is less developed. I thought that I can do more work. That how convincing are you? Because the tone with which you answer the question, they also matter. It is not just only the content. I want to do public service. If this is the tone, that doesn't indicate the intensity with which that you have decided to do public service. If your content, if your tone, if your body language, all three of them concur, it will be very convincing for the board. And all these three will concur provided you have the conviction in them. I am more likely to get specific questions about baking. So should I mention only cooking or both these hobbies? They may not know much about baking. If you know more about baking than they do, you mention it. Baking is a good hobby. Many girl students, they write it. And I generally don't handle them too far on baking because I don't know anything on baking. So non-fictional reading is a good hobby, and select 2-3 titles that you have read, non-fictional topics, and be ready for it. So anything else? Yes? Yeah, sometimes they may ask, and for example, your socio-economic questionnaire also asks any suggestions. If you have a few suggestions, you can mention. For example, one question sometimes the board asks, do you have anything to ask at the end of your interview? Generally, I advise the students, if the interview had gone very well, not to risk by asking any questions. You just pretend that you are thinking, and you say, no sir, at this moment I don't think of any questions. Louder. Which one? Sports? The award you have got?
So she's also
As the
posted at Sports Authority of India.
You are working at sports in the Sports Authority of India. You want to give fourth preference to Danix.
No, sir. Should I opt it or not? Because in Sports Authority of India, I am Group A.
Group A officer. Yes, that is, in terms of long-term promotional avenues available, Danix will be any day better and the job profile will be very good because it is similar to the administrative job that an IAS officer does. So in the long run, it will be better. And what about your promotional avenues in the long run in the current job?
I'll be maximum going to executive.
I think that Danips seems to be better service, though I don't know much about your service. So you can opt for Danix. There is a spelling mistake in my father's name in caste certificate. Yes, that you have to get it corrected. Especially if you belong to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities, this caste certificate is very important. So you can seek to get it corrected from the department that issued the caste certificate, and if they ask you to provide an affidavit, then produce it. So anything else? So then I will meet you all day after tomorrow, where I will talk about the basic do's and don'ts. Okay then. Thank you. All the best. God bless you.